Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ethan along with Pete, and this is the Films and Stuff podcast. Hey, Pete.
How's it going, buddy?
Everything is great. You know the drill. It is our weekly stream or skip segment. Pete, you know the rules. Can you summarize them quickly for the listeners?
Absolutely. So Ethan has provided me a list of TV shows for me. I have provided him with a list of TV shows. We randomly select a new TV show every week, watch at least 2 episodes, if not more, and on that basis determine if the show is worth streaming or skipping.
That's right. And this week, what was your assignment, Pete?
So this week I had a drama on Apple TV called Dear Edward.
Dear Edward.
Have you watched it?
I have not. I have seen it whenever I'm on Apple TV Plus homepage. I see it pop up with like that short trailer.
Okay.
So I have some understanding of it, but to be honest, I don't really know where the story begins. So fill us in.
Absolutely. So it's actually not a very easy premise to describe exactly. So let me start off. Like normally I give you the overall premise of the show and then talk about the episodes. Let me talk about the episodes first. So in the first episode, we highlight several different stories of individuals and families in New York City.
Okay.
You know, so you find out that there's a congresswoman and her assistant who happens to be her granddaughter. You see a family of 4 where the 2 boys are homeschooled and the mother is a writer for, I think, either a theater or a movie production. You see a very wealthy, stereotypical New York heiress who's out shopping with her daughter for her birthday, and they're doing like this super expensive shopping trip montage, that kind of thing. And you learn that every one of those people is either on a flight to Los Angeles or has someone they know who's going to be on that flight to Los Angeles. So for example, that family of 4, they're moving across the country because the mom has gotten a new job in Los Angeles, that kind of thing. And then that plane crashes. No survivors except for one young boy, one of the 2 brothers from that family of 4, whose name is Edward.
No way. The plane crashes?
Yeah.
And one person survives.
Just that little boy, nobody else. That's
Was
how
he
the
sitting
first...
on the black box? Wow.
So that's the first episode. And then in the second episode, this is kind of now we're learning about the flight and about the aftermath of the flight. So the rich heiress sets up a support group for the victims and all the families, right? Her husband was on that flight and he died. He was going to LA for a business trip and he has never missed his daughter's birthday. So they were all like, it's annoying. You know, I'm really upset at my dad for leaving. And then in that episode, for example, we learned that the reason he was going to LA was not for a business trip. It was because he had a second secret family there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And that really, they're no longer rich. He's been broke for 1.5 years and they've been living on like credit card debt.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And then we learn, you know, the congresswoman who dies, she wanted her granddaughter to replace her when she retired. And then her chief of staff decides to run. It's understood that the granddaughter isn't going to run. But obviously, I think by the end of the series, we're going to see her run. All these kinds of things. So we're starting to see the individual stories of everyone in a series of flashbacks and current time.
Okay.
So that's what the show is. If you ask me what is the plot of this show, I could not tell you. I genuinely don't know. I think that this is, at least at this stage, having watched 2 episodes, and maybe this is, I think, where we start to see some of the limitations of our format.
Yeah.
But after 2 episodes, I can't tell you what the overarching plot of the show is. But what I can tell you is that production design is excellent. The show looks very good. And I think that this is a case of Apple just producing a very, very solid high drama. It's going to have what I clearly think are going to be some emotional highs and some emotional lows.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my bag at the moment, but that's not to say I won't come back to it. I just think that right now I'm putting it on my back burner because there are other shows on my watch list that I'm going to prioritize. I think that this is a really good mooch for Apple TV Plus. I imagine that by the end of the 8th or 10th episode, however many episodes there are, I would think this is a great show. But the fact of the matter remains, after watching 2 episodes, I'm not super keen on continuing right now because our times are limited. So I would rather be focusing on other shows, and that tells me that the show is a mooch.
Do you remember when we watched, also on Apple TV Plus, I think, 9 Perfect Strangers?
Hulu, that's exactly right.
Yeah, Hulu. We watched 9 Perfect Strangers, right? Which also was compelling because it had all those different stories.
Exactly.
But there was no real plot,
no
right?
real connective plot per se.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is not a criticism because, like you rightly said, 9 Perfect Strangers also a good show, but if I remember correctly, was also a mooch.
Yeah.
And I think if there were an interconnected plot, although I wouldn't want them to make one just for the sake of connecting everyone randomly.
Yeah.
But if there were a connecting plot thread, it might be more of a compelling show to watch. But at least at this stage, I definitely want to finish it, but it's not something I'm going to finish now.
Okay. So that is Dear Edward, Apple TV Plus, strong mooch.
Exactly. A very strong mooch.
Turning the page, I was assigned a show called The Watcher, which is on Netflix. It's a 2022 series. There's 2 seasons out. I watched 3 episodes of season 1. And first, let's make a caveat about myself. I, as our regular listeners and Pete well know, do not like horror, scary, creepy, anything that is in that wheelhouse. And The Watcher is definitely in that vein. It is about a typical American family. The husband is a lawyer or accountant. The wife is some type of artist. They have 2 children, an older girl who's underage but extremely fetching, a younger son who's very weird. You could think of it as Ozark, right?
Okay.
Very similar family, right? They move out to what is their dream home in the suburbs of somewhere in upstate New York. And they decide that they want to raise their children in this beautiful house with a big backyard and in a nice, safe community. And the husband will commute into the city, and they will miss their New York lifestyle a little bit, but this will be more emotionally healthy and balancing for them. They come into this house. They're not sure if they can afford it. They end up stretching themselves financially. They buy it. They start remodeling. Everything is perfect. We see them having these beautiful pancake breakfasts together and barbecues together and Italian pasta night together. But then things turn scary. We kind of knew this was coming, right? The perfect place is not so perfect anymore. These strange little things kind of happen, like the windows, the doors, the voices, the music, kind of typical scary attic stuff. And they start to get like these very strange letters in the mail. And the letters are signed The Watcher. And the implication is that there's something special or spooky about this house. I haven't finished it, so I'm not sure what. I assume it's going to be like some satanic headquarters that's been passed on from generation to generation of satanic worshipers, something like this, right? And the Watcher, his job is kind of what it sounds, to watch it and make sure that no one inhabits the house. And it seems that this house has a history that when anyone buys it, weird things start to happen. And right away, they've got to get out, they've got to sell it, right? So the watcher is like, hey, you guys moved in. It's only a matter of time until I get you guys to move out. Maybe your kids will have a role. I might sacrifice them, blah, 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 blah. I turned it off after 2 episodes for a few reasons. One, this is maybe not scary, but it's spooky. And that's not my style at all. So I'm really not interested in that. It's very kind of suspenseful. The music from the attic, the voices, the letters. How did someone get in the house? The doors were locked, and the window, and the tapping, and the trees blowing, like all that kind of like suspenseful stuff. But it's also a little bit like we've been down this path before. You can fast forward it. You're not really missing anything. We know how this is going to play out, right? The security guard that they hire to watch it, of course, he's going to get distracted by the sexy daughter swimming, and he's not going to watch. And of course, this is going to happen. It just seemed very predictable, I guess, in terms of the scariness. I would expect that probably midway through the season, there's going to be like some kind of discovery or little plot twist, and we'll understand more about who is the watcher, what are their intentions, what's the history of the house, and things like that. But I have to say, having watched 2 episodes, there's nothing really remarkable here. Unless you really, really are into these types of creepy, suspenseful shows, I just don't think that there's really much interesting here. The cast, I have to say, I kind of like the cast. Bobby Cannavale is the husband.
Love him, yeah.
Right? I know. He's amazing in everything. Even this. Naomi Watts is his wife. They've got some breakout performances by, the kids. And then Mia Farrow is in this movie.
What?
Yeah. Anyway, she's in it. She's super old, by the way. It's not criticism, just a fact. But I thought it was a little bit remarkable. We haven't seen or heard of her in a long, long, long time. For her to make an appearance in this show, I thought was remarkable. She's listed prominently. I mean, it says when you go to IMDb and it identifies who's in the show, she's listed 3rd after Naomi Watts and Cannavale.
Right.
So I have to say, I give the show a lot of credit for what it is. I think if I were Cannavale, it is not really his wheelhouse. I think of him as more of an action-y guy or a mob guy. I don't think of him as kind of the doting suburban father trying to protect his family from this ominous watcher presence. I love him a lot as an actor, but I don't find it being the best role for him. Naomi Watts, I think that's kind of like up her wheelhouse now. I mean, she's playing a mother. It's kind of where she fits. So that's how I feel about The Watcher on Netflix. It's definitely a skip, in my opinion. I don't say it maliciously. I just don't think that there's really anything interesting or novel about it. So unless you are really, really a fan of suspense and creepy, spooky things, I suggest you skip this and move on to something else. And if you're going to be watching Netflix, may I plug the Films and Stuff episode that Pete and I just did about Fubar, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. You could watch that instead.
Agreed. And speaking of skipping it, let's move on to what we're watching next week.
Oh, yeah. Tell me.
So next week, you're going to be on Hulu and you're watching a show called Rabbit Hole.
Rabbit Hole on Hulu?
Yep.
I have no idea what that's about. And I have to say, putting those 2 things together, I've got very high expectations.
Yeah. I just saw the genre and put it on your list. I think it's in your wheelhouse. I hope it's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. That seems like a sci-fi-y kind of supernatural type of thing.
I won't even tell you the premise because I want you to go in with no expectations.
I'll go in with no expectations.
Yeah, I think, let's just say it this way. I hope you like it because then I can watch it as well.
Okay.
In the meantime, I will be on Apple TV and I will be watching Silo, which is a relatively new show.
Oh, yeah. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, I've been desperate to watch it, but since you put it on my list, I've been refraining from doing so. And thankfully, I get to watch it next.
Starring Rebecca Ferguson, and I cannot tell you where I know her from, but I know that's a big name, right?
I mean, yes, I've seen her in a lot
Mission
of things.
Impossible?
But I think she was in Mission Impossible.
We'll confirm next week after you watch Silo, Apple TV Plus.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to it. But in the meantime, if you guys have any shows that you would like us to put on our list, or maybe even bypass the list entirely and say, hey, you need to watch this and do an episode on this, we're happy to do that. Reach out to us, tweet at us at FNS Podcast, DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast, email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com, or the easiest thing you can do is like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. Any of those things helps us out greatly.
Indeed. And that is a wrap for this week's episode of Stream or Skip on the Films and Stuff podcast. We will see you all next week with a breakdown of Rabbit Hole and Silo.
Perfect. Until then, thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.